I have entirely too many books on my TBR, and honestly at this point, it's just getting a little embarrassing. Exhibit A, my TBR bookshelf. This is an entire bookshelf full of exclusively books that I have not yet read, which is just kind of sad, especially because I keep buying more books, even though I have now completely filled this entire bookshelf and there's nowhere for them to go. So in this video, I am kickstarting the process of actually tackling this situation by reading the very first line of every single one of these books, picking the one that intrigues me the most, and reading it, no questions asked, no procrastinating, no excuses, in the next couple days. And hopefully just the process of reading the first lines of all these books will get me excited about many of them and bump them to the top of my TBR, so I'll keep working through the ones I have instead of being distracted by new shiny things. Let's be real, I'm gonna still be distracted by new and shiny things, but maybe I will remember that the old things were also new and shiny once. Over the course of this video. This video was inspired by a video I saw Gavin do, and I believe he mentioned in his video that he was inspired by books on Lala, so I will link their videos in the description box so you can go check them out. But without further ado, I think I need to get started because I have a lot of books to go through. I thought it would be more fun if I included you on this, so I will read the first lines of every single one of these books out loud, and maybe that will intrigue you to pick some of these up too, which now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm realizing is possibly counterproductive, at least for you, because if you also have a huge pile of physical books that you have not yet read, but then you're inspired to pick up new books because of this video, then I'm sorry. Well, anyway, I'm still gonna do it because I'm excited about this idea, and maybe it'll inspire you to do this with your own bookshelf. Remember why you picked up some of the books that you've had for years. So that is what this video is. I am super excited, but also pretty nervous. We'll see how long this takes me. So grab a drink, a blanket, a floofy animal friend, just get cozy and hang out with me as I read the first line of every single book on my TBR bookshelf to find the one that I am most intrigued by. Before I get started though, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Ritual, because they are helping me to keep my noggin working to the best of its ability as I read as many books as humanly possible. Your brain needs a lot of energy and other things to function properly, and you know what you need to read? A working brain. And that's why I rely on Ritual to keep my brain working, even on days that I am so engrossed with reading that I only eat from my favorite food group, cereal. Ritual is also helping me keep my book-related existential crises in check by helping me to manage my stress levels, even when I am rudely reminded that I will not live forever and therefore will never be able to read every single book that I would like to read, because there's just not enough time. Ritual offers a science-backed wellness range that is designed to support your body through all of life's stages. Essential for Women 18+ is a clinical-backed multivitamin formulated to support key nutrient needs of women 18 to 49. Essential for Women uses a clean formula with high-quality key nutrients in bioavailable forms. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, free of major allergens, and non-GMO project certified. They're also third-party tested for heavy metals, microbes, and major allergens. Their patented capsule technology combines oily and dry ingredients in a single capsule, meaning you can take your omega-3 at the same time as your vitamin D. They're also formulated to be gentle on your stomach, meaning you can take them any time of day with or without food, which is super convenient. You can get all your key nutrients in just 2 capsules a day instead of a handful, and they have an essence of mint, which makes them really pleasant to take. I've also been taking Ritual's new stress relief because I am a stress ball. I am constantly stressed out and anxious, and I learned recently that the stress hormone cortisol actually peaks in the morning. So I've been taking my Ritual stress relief every single morning. The coolest thing about stress relief is that it has 3-tablet in-capsule technology, which allows you to not only get instant stress relief, but also extended 8-hour relief, keeping you even over an entire day's worth of cortisol peaks and valleys. I love that stress relief helps me to feel calmer and more even-keeled throughout my workday without any drowsiness at all. Ritual prioritizes having traceable ingredients. They share the sources, suppliers, and studies behind their key ingredients, because not all ingredients are created equal. Stress relief contains a trio of clinically studied ingredients to help the body with stress management. Shodan ashwagandha is clinically studied to support normal cortisol levels and reduce stress. Suntheanine, L-theanine, is clinically studied to provide quick stress relief within an hour and a non-drowsy sense of calm. And saffron, as Affron, is clinically studied to promote a positive mood and reduce stress. It's super easy to add stress relief to your routine. You take one capsule in the morning because it has immediate and long-term 8-hour release, and you can have it delivered as a subscription so you never have to remember to order it before you run out. Use the link in my description box and my discount code PLANTBB25 to get 25% off your first order from Ritual, or use this QR code. Okay, so now without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with this top shelf here. I have loosely organized this bookshelf. So up here, we start with science fiction, and then we transition somewhere around here into fantasy. A couple fantasies at the end here go into reading around the world, non-Western classics, and then we get into Western classics here, and then some more Western classics here, Canadian books, and then behind me on this bottom shelf is contemporary fiction, literary fiction, and then a little bit of other genre fiction. And then in the cabinet at the bottom, I have another shelf that's sort of random contemporary fiction or general fiction. And I also have all of my nonfiction. I think it'd be fun to start from the top and work our way down. So let's start with the top shelf on the left, my little sci-fi section. Okay, so at the top here, okay, so the first book is Lest Darkness Fall by L. Sprague de Camp. This is no longer in print. I saw it mentioned in a random Reddit thread and I scoured the internet for it and I found it on Etsy. But let's read the first line. Chapter 1. Tancredi took his hands off the wheel again and waved them. That's it. Okay. Well, I guess I will give that, I don't know what I'll give that. 1 star. It didn't really do anything to intrigue me. Next, we have sci-fi classic, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. Chapter 1. I'll make my report as if I told a story, for I was taught as a child on my homeworld that truth is a matter of the imagination. Interesting. Truth was capitalized, which I think is one of the most intriguing parts of that first line. I think 3 stars is good. It was intriguing, but not, you know, the most intriguing thing I've ever read. Okay, next I have a trilogy, so I'm just going to read the first line of the first book of the trilogy. This is the Ambergris, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. So, City of Saints and Madmen by Jeff Vandermeer. Drayden in love, beneath the window of his love, staring up at her while crowds surge and seethe around him, bumping and bruising him, all unawares in their rough-clothed, bright-rouged thousands. Okay, that is not at all what I expected, and I kind of love it. I'm going to give this 5 stars for a first line. It's the combination of finding the first line interesting in its own right and kind of liking the rhythm of the way the first line was written, but also how unexpected it is for the genre and for what I thought I was going to get. So 5 stars for this. Very intrigued. So far, this is the top of my list. Okay, here I have another book by Jeff Vandermeer. This is Hummingbird Salamander. I think this is just a standalone. I went to the address in the note because I didn't want to go to work. That's it. I mean, relatable, sure. Intriguing, not really. Maybe 2 stars. I guess it's slightly more intriguing because I'm wondering, what is this note and what is the address and what are they going to find there? But it's not that intriguing. Let's be real. Here I have another vintage book. I believe this one is also out of print. This is The Crystal World by J.G. Ballard. And I really love this edition that I managed to find. Oh, I love the smell. I love the smell of really old books. There's just something about like slightly musty paper. If I could get a perfume that smelled like musty old book smell, I would wear it all the time. Okay. Above all, the darkness of the river was what impressed Dr. Sanders as he looked out for the first time across the open mouth of the Matar estuary. I like it. Am I intrigued? Not really. Let's give it 2 stars. Next, I have a graphic novel. This is, heavy. This is On a Sunbeam by Tilly Walden. This one's going to be hard because it's a comic or a graphic novel, so there's not going to be nearly a substantial first line, I imagine. Maybe what's more fair is to just look at the first page because there also is no text on this first page, so I think that's what I'm going to do. So we've got a starry night and what looks to be a woman possibly in a little spaceship that looks almost like a fish approaching a floating cathedral in space. I can't say it's not intriguing. I am feeling a strong urge to turn the page and know what is going to happen next. So honestly, even though there's no text on this page, I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. Sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, next is Iron Widow. I did technically start this, but I believe I only read the first chapter, and this was a while ago, and then I got distracted by other things and put it down. Oh, I forgot that there is a little content warning at the beginning. I love when authors do that. Okay, prologue. The Hunduns were coming. That's it. Again, if I let myself percolate for a bit, I could start asking, who are the Hunduns? Where are they coming from? Where are they coming to? What are they going to do when they get there? But again, that's more so me letting my imagination run away with me and my own natural curiosity taking over than it is the first line actually being intriguing, you know? There is something sort of impending, action-heavy about that punchy first sentence, so 2 stars. Okay, next is The Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette de Bodard. It has nice sprayed edges. None of this has anything to do with the actual first line. Oh, and the cover itself is really nice. I'm getting distracted. We're not judging the books by their covers or their end papers or their sprayed edges. We're judging them by their first line. So let's find the first line. The Red Scholar is dead. Maybe it's a genre fiction thing, maybe it's a sci-fi thing, but these very short, punchy first sentences are not really doing it for me. Honestly, I think I'm gonna give this one 1 star. Something about it kind of bugs me. I'm irked by that for some reason. Okay, next is Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. It also has content warnings. I feel like the books with content warnings should get an extra half star because I appreciate conscientiousness. Who are the humans? Well, I guess it's good it got the bonus half star because another short, punchy first sentence. This one's also getting 1 star. Give me something, you know? Pique my interest a little bit. Come on. I realize most people are not going to read the first sentence and then stop right away if they're not intrigued. But, you know, you want to capture your audience, people. Okay, now we're transitioning into fantasy. This is another one that technically I did start. This is book 2 of the Legendborn cycle. I read book 1. And I do believe I read the first couple chapters, but it was a while ago and I honestly don't remember anything about them. So, my veins burn with the spirits of my ancestors. I mean, that's pretty intense. That's a pretty epic first line, I must admit. I think I'll give it 4 stars. That's got something going for it, you know? Song of Silver, Flame Like Night by Emily Wen Zhao. I feel like if a chapter or a section starts with a quote, the quote shouldn't count. It should still be the first line of the actual text. So there is a little quote, but I'm going to skip it. The last kingdom had been brought to its knees, but the view was mighty fine from here. As that sentence started, I was like, no, that's not that interesting. But then the way it ended, it just kind of subverted my expectations there. I kind of love it. I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to get 4 stars too. It's not groundbreaking, but I like that it subverts expectations, starting off with something very traditional, fantasy-wise and serious, and then dropping the humor in the second half. It's a nice little contrast. This next one is also a series. It's A Magic Steeped in Poison, and then the sequel, A Venom Dark and Sweet, both by Judy I. Lin. They say you can spot a true Sheneng Shi by their hands, palms colored by the stain of the earth, fingertips scarred from thorns, a permanent crust of soil and blood darkening the crescents of their nails. That is pretty interesting. I am intrigued. I want to know who they are and why those are their distinguishing features. I like it. I'm gonna give it 5. Yeah, let's give it 5. I'm using an erasable pen, so I can change my mind. I am finding myself wanting to pause filming so I can keep reading, which I feel is probably a good sign. So, next is Witch King by Martha Wells. It's a very fancy cover. We're gonna skip the dramatis personae. Chapter 1. Waking was floating to the surface of a soft world of water. Not what Kai had expected. I feel like the first part of that sentence had me, and the second part lost me. You know? 2 stars. Something about the way that sentence was written makes me nervous about the writing style of this, which is probably judging it too soon, but that's the whole point of this video, so it's fine. Okay, next is a collection of all the books in the Earthsea series by Ursula K. Le Guin. I did read the first book in this series, A Wizard of Earthsea, with my book club, but I haven't read any of the others, so I'm going to read the first line of book 2. This is so heavy. Come home, Tanar. Sorry, Ursula. I'm gonna give it 1 star. Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. It has an author's note at the start that includes content warnings, so it's going to get a bonus ½ star. Once upon a time, on the coldest night of midwinter, in the darkest heart of the forest, death and fortune came to a crossroads. It's not blowing me away, but I like it. I like it. Solid 3 stars. The Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood. This is a gorgeous cover. I'm obsessed with it. Also beautiful end papers that sort of flow into the back. So pretty. And a content warning. Yay! A silent maid braided Leto's hair into an elaborate crown for her execution. Okay, I'm pretty intrigued, I must admit. Someone who has enough status to be given a maid to braid her hair elaborately on the day that she's going to be executed. I kind of want to know what's going on. I think I'm going to give that 4 stars. That was pretty intriguing, plus a ½ star. So 4.5 stars. Then I have The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. The Nightmare. The forest comes for the boy on his 13th birthday. It's not intriguing, but not that intriguing either. I'm going to do 2 stars. Then I have The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. Delaney Myers Petrov wasn't made of glass, but sometimes she felt as though she might be. I don't like that. I hate the trope of main characters who are so incredibly fragile and they have to be saved constantly by everyone, almost as much as I hate main characters who are Mary Sues and ridiculously good at everything they ever do. So this one is going to get 1 star. Sorry, you're probably very good. I've been burned one too many times by that trope. And then I have a classic fantasy here, The Worm Ouroboros, which has been on my TBR for a long time, and I managed to find a really cool vintage edition by E.R. Edison. The Induction. There was a man named Lessingham, dwelt in an old low house in Wasdale, set in a grey old garden where yew trees flourished that had seen Vikings in Copeland in their seedling time. Not bad. Not super intriguing, but I like it. It has a very Once Upon a Time vibe, so I think I'm going to give The Worm Ouroboros 3 stars. Let's move on to shelf 2. So first I have Pandora by Susan Stokes Chapman. I got this in an airport. Dora Blake has been hunched over her desk since dawn. Meh. Next is a much more recent addition to my library, which is Rook by William Ritter. Life Goes On, which I have always felt was rude on Life's part. Okay, I like that. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like any book that is going to give me a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek silliness, I'm probably going to enjoy that. 3 stars. Next I have Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. I See You. Well, that didn't give me much. Then I have Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. I've got a question for you. How the fuck did we end up with the name Dark One anyway? Okay, I enjoy dropping an F-bomb in the first sentence. I feel like that gives me a sign of what's to come. And as someone who swears like a sailor in my regular life without even noticing that I'm swearing, I kind of appreciate it. I think I'll give it 3 stars. Then I have The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I actually don't know how to say his name. I've only ever seen it written down. I'm pretty sure this isn't fantasy. I think I put it on the wrong shelf, but it's fine. I'll just do it now. The small boys came early to the hanging. The small boys came early to the hanging? Good lord. Wow, okay. That's kind of alarming. I guess it's somewhat intriguing, but in a disturbing way. I think I'll give it 3 stars. It's definitely more interesting than a lot of the first lines we've gone through already, but I'm kind of afraid. Next, I have the 3 other books in the series, or The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And I read The Angel's Game for my reading sequels of books I loved video, so I'll link that for you if you missed it and you want to see like a full reading and review. That year at Christmas time, every morning dawned laced with frost under leaden skies. Well, I already know that I enjoy this series, and I already know that I really enjoy Carlos Ruiz Zafón's writing style. I also enjoyed that first line. Not the most intriguing first line ever. I think I'm also going to give it 3 stars. Good, but not outstanding as far as first lines go. This one is the Penguin Book of Japanese Short Stories. 5 or 6 years ago, on 25 August 1920 to be precise, I received a letter from the old province of Yamato from a woman I had never met by the name of Shigeko. I mean, it's not bad. I am interested. It's set in 1925, 26, and something about the way that was written piqued my interest. So I think I'll give that one 3 stars as well. Then I have Africa Risen. This is a speculative fiction collection of short stories written by African authors. So a house loomed on the horizon. Bright blue walls stuck out of gray rocks, barely discernible against the bare sky. Interesting. Again, not the most intriguing first sentence I've ever read. Something about the little play on words of barely discernible against the bare sky, and something about the rhythm of that first line did something for my brain, gave me a little bit of serotonin. So 3 stars. Then I have, this is Chaos, a Fable by Rodrigo Ray Rosa. I've read one other book by Rodrigo Ray Rosa, Severina, which was a book club pick. On his last Sunday in Tangier, after giving a talk on the contemporary Mexican novel at the book fair, he visited Suwannee, a neighborhood in the lower part of Harun Rashid. I mean, I am intrigued at the fact that presumably our protagonist was the one giving a talk on the contemporary Mexican novel and is clearly traveling the world. What am I going to give Chaos? I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. I would like to attend the seminar. And I hope this book has a little bit of the same waxing poetic about literature that Severina did. That was one of my favorite things about that book. Next pile. This is the rest of my non-Western classics / reading around the world. First up, I have The Essential Roomie, translated by Coleman Barks, and in the tavern are many wines, the wine of delight in color and form and taste, the wine of the intellect's agility, the fine port of stories, and the cabernet of soul singing. Well, that's fantastic. Not that I should be shocked. That was really great. Okay, I'm going to give The Essential Roomie a cute little 5 stars. I enjoyed that. Then I have White on White, Mornings. The apartment expanded with light. C'est tout. I don't really have anything to say about that. It was pretty meh. I don't hate it. I think I'll give it 2 stars. Midak Ali. Many things combine to show that Midak Ali is one of the gems of times gone by, and that it once shone forth like a flashing star in the history of Cairo. Interesting. Again, not the most intriguing thing ever, but I am interested. Let's do 3 stars. We have Good Old Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I have not read any Dostoevsky yet, so probably need to rectify that soon. At the beginning of July, during an extremely hot spell, towards evening, a young man left the closet he rented from tenants in S Lane, walked out to the street, and slowly, as if indecisively, headed for the K Bridge. Again, not the most intriguing thing I've ever read in my whole life, but I do enjoy the writing style. I like a run-on sentence. I like a sentence that has a little bit of rhythm, has a couple commas, you know, give me something. I like it. Crime and Punishment's gonna get 3 stars. Then we have Love in a Fallen City by Eileen Chang. Go and fetch, will you please, a copper incense brazier, a family heirloom gorgeously encrusted now with moldy green, and light in it some pungent chips of aloes wood. Again, I like that this has a little bit of a setting the stage to tell an epic tale, fairy tale sort of vibe. I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. Then I have The Pillow Book, In Spring, the Dawn, when the slowly paling mountain rim is tinged with red and wisps of faintly crimson purple cloud float in the sky. Well, that's beautiful. I'm a fan. Dang. Okay, I like that. That is my kind of writing. So The Pillow Book is getting 5 stars. Dang, I want to keep reading. Then I have The Master and Margarita. One hot spring evening, just as the sun was going down, 2 men appeared at Patriarch's Ponds. Patriarch's Ponds? Well, okay then. I'll give it 3 stars. Then we have Borges. His work was constantly referenced in Severina by Rodrigo Ray Rosa, which made me want to read his work because he was such a fixture in that book. Ooh, I didn't even realize this is a secondhand edition and it's a little annotated. That's exciting. I love reading other people's annotations, almost as much as I love writing my own. I owe the discovery of Ukbar to the conjunction of a mirror and an encyclopedia. Okay, I would say that's pretty intriguing, I'm not gonna lie. I want to know more. I'm not sure it's quite 5 stars, but 4 stars definitely. And the final book that I have in my Reading Around the World / non-Western classics section is Popol Vuh, the definitive edition of the Mayan Book of the Dawn of Life and the Glories of Gods and Kings. This is the beginning of the ancient word, here in this place called Quiché. I feel like it's a little unfair to compare this to a lot of the other books, but I'm going to say 3 stars. Good, not mind-blowing. And now we're getting into what I would consider Western classics. So starting with the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath, starts with some quotes, so I'll skip those. And here's the first entry, July 1950. I may never be happy, but tonight I am content. It's pretty great, especially considering it's just literally her journal. Honestly, I'm going to give it 5 stars. That was pretty great, to be honest. Then I have North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I have heard really good things about this. I feel like I've seen North and South listed as quite a few people's favorite classic. Edith. That's it. Go on, girl, give us nothing. I'm gonna say 1 star. I don't know. I got nothing from that, to be honest. Paradise Lost by John Milton. Book 1, The Argument. This first book proposes, first in brief, the whole subject, man's disobedience and the loss thereupon of paradise, wherein he was placed. Then touches the prime cause of his fall, the serpent, or rather Satan in the serpent, who, revolting from God and drawing to his side many legions of angels, was by the command of God driven out of heaven with all his crew into the great deep. Now that is an epic sentence. And I must give it points for being so long, because I do love a good long sentence. It's also quite intriguing. And I'm not mad at a book that sets out its thesis statement that tells us what it's trying to do right from the beginning, so we know what to expect. So I'm going to say Paradise Lost. You get 4 stars. Now I have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. It was 9:30 on Christmas Eve. I mean, it set the time and place, I suppose, but I'm going to give it 2 stars. Then I have A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. This is very hard to read. What is happening? I thought I was having a stroke. Okay, wait. Once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road, and this moo cow that was coming down along the road met a nice little boy named Baby Tuku. Okay, that whole sentence had no punctuation until the ellipses at the end. That broke my brain a little bit. I mean, to be honest, I am intrigued, but mostly because why? Why was it written like that? I did not expect that at all. I don't know how to react to that at all. I'm gonna give it 3 stars because otherwise I will sit here for 20 minutes in confusion and we'll get nowhere. Then I have Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. They say when trouble comes, close ranks, and so the white people did. Damn. That might have been the best first line of anything I've read so far. Damn. Okay. Wide Sargasso Sea is getting 5 stars. That honestly might be the most intriguing first line of any of the books that I've gone through so far, which would mean that I would have to read 2 books for this video because I really want to read Jane Eyre first. So, The Complete Short Stories of Oscar Wilde. I love Oscar Wilde. It was Lady Windermere's last reception before Easter, and Bentinck House was even more crowded than usual. Not bad. I'm gonna say, as much as I love Oscar Wilde, and I truly adore Oscar Wilde, he's one of my favorite authors, that didn't really capture me. So I'm gonna do 2 stars, which kind of hurts my soul, but I'm sure the short stories are great. So shelf number 2 is finished. We're moving on to shelf number 3, which is all pretty editions of Western classics. First, I have The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I don't know what happened to the dust jacket. Lost it at some point over the years. I've owned this book for probably at least a decade. When I had journeyed half of our life's way, I found myself within a shadowed forest, for I had lost the path that does not stray. Pretty good. I like that. I do. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. That's very up my alley. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. The year 1866 was marked by a bizarre development, an unexplained and downright inexplicable phenomenon that surely no one has forgotten. I like it. That was pretty intriguing for me anyway. I'm going to give that 4 stars. Next is not actually a classic, but just because it's such a pretty edition, I put it on this shelf with my other pretty books. This is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. Hello. You started at the beginning, which is impressive. That's a very cute start. I'll give it 4 stars. I like the sense of humor. Then I have Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Call Me Ishmael. Well, Okay, Ishmael, I will. That is fine. 2 stars. First is the Blue Fairy book, which my parents bought me ages ago. This is a very old Folio Society edition. And I definitely have read some of these stories over the years, but I can't remember which ones I've read and which ones I haven't. I didn't indicate that in any way, so I'm just going to read the first line of the first one, and honestly, I probably don't remember any of the details anyway. So, the Bronze Ring. Once upon a time, in a certain country, there lived a king whose palace was surrounded by a spacious garden. Very fairy tale, as to be expected. 3 stars. Why not? Okay, next I have the Complete Grimm's Fairy Tales, which I've been wanting to read for ages. So let's go to The Frog King, or Iron Henry. In old times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which had seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. That's pretty good. I feel like I'd give that a solid 4 stars. Then I have The Complete Sherlock Holmes, which I've been meaning to read for ages as well, by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London and proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the army. Not bad. Again, not the best first line I've ever read in my life. I think I'll give it 2 stars. And then I have the Complete Tales and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I have read The Fall of the House of Usher from this collection, also in my Halloween horror reading vlog, but I haven't read any of the other stories in this collection. So, The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hans Pfaall. By late accounts from Rotterdam, that city seems to be in a high state of philosophical excitement. Again, not the most intriguing beginning to a tale that I have ever experienced. I'm going to say 2 stars. Why not? Next, I have 3 LitJoy Classic editions. One of them, Wuthering Heights, I have already read in a Dark Academia reading vlog, but I also have Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre. Technically, I have read Pride and Prejudice, but I read it so long ago that I truly remember almost nothing. Whereas some books that I read even a long time ago, like Lord of the Rings trilogy and The Hobbit, I remember so much and I reread them multiple times. Pride and Prejudice has not stuck in my brain at all. So I'm going to read the first line of it, treat it like a new read, even though technically I've read it. And then Jane Eyre, I have never read. So let's start with Pride and Prejudice. I love these editions. They're gorgeous. They have really beautiful art. And the first line, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife, which might be one of the most famous first lines of any book ever. And I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't give it 5 stars. Clearly, it has some staying power for people. Then Jane Eyre, there was no possibility of taking a walk that day. Meh. It feels really harsh to only give it 1 star, but it truly gave me nothing. Maybe I'll give it 2. I'll give it 2 stars. Ulysses by James Joyce. There's almost no chance that I will choose this to read for this video, even if it has an incredible first line, because this is a monster. But let's see. Part 1. Stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead, bearing a bowl of lather on which a mirror and a razor lay crossed. That was fine. That didn't do that much for me either. I'm honestly going to give it 1 star. I am not intrigued. The Collected Ghost Stories of M.R. James. I read one of these stories for my Halloween horror reading vlog. Saint Bertrand de Comines is a decayed town on the spurs of the Pyrenees, not very far from Toulouse, and still nearer to Bagnères de Luchon. Not gonna lie, that didn't really give me anything. I'm gonna give that 1 star. And then I have another short story horror collection. This is The Great God Pan and Other Horror Stories by Arthur Machen. One hot afternoon in August, a gorgeous young gentleman, one would say the last of his race in London, set out from the circus end and proceeded to stroll along the lonely expanse of Piccadilly Deserta. It was fine, I guess. I'm gonna do 2 stars. Okay, so that was the end of this shelf. We're moving on to the bottom shelf here, and this is just a mix of books of different genres, really, and lots of contemporary. So first I have The Child Thief by Bram, which is horror, I believe. Prologue. It would happen again tonight. The really bad thing. Not intriguing. Sort of interesting. Not super intriguing, though. 3 stars. Then I have Goblin, a novel in 6 novellas by Josh Malerman, which is also horror. If Tom hadn't left his sweater in his locker, if he hadn't gone back to get it, and if he hadn't passed the main office on the way, the whole dark night might have been avoided. Not a bad intro, actually. A little bit does give you a little bit of an intriguing, what was the whole Dark Knight and how could it have been avoided? 4 stars. Then I have Sundial by Catriona Ward, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. Rob, in huge capitals. It's the chicken pox that makes me sure my husband is having another affair. That might be one of the most intriguing first lines of any of these so far. That was pretty good, actually. Okay. Sundial gets 5 stars. How was chickenpox the dead giveaway? I need to know. Then I have In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt, which is also, I believe, a horror. I told my man I was off to pick berries, and that he should watch our son, for I would be gone some good while. That's fine. I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Then I have All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. This is another one that I read the first couple chapters, got distracted and did not finish. So I do not really remember anything about this. Moments before Hubert met Ashley for the first time, he had been settled in his favorite armchair, Puss curled up on his lap, waiting for Rose to call. Not the most intriguing first line ever, but a cat named Puss definitely increases how intrigued I am. So I'm going to say 3 stars. Next, this is all of these books I bought when I was in Toronto last year in a bookshop by giving the bookseller the prompt, what are your weirdest books? And these are the ones he suggested. So I meant to do a reading vlog where I read all 5 of these books that were given to me, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But let me know in the comments if you would want that reading vlog where I read all of these and just see if his interpretation of weird books matches mine. So first I have The Weak Spot by Lucy Elvin. The river moved quickly for such an unrushed place. Curling around the base of the mountain, and at the crest of the town lay the golden side of a ruined abbey. I like that. 4 stars. That was pretty good. Carnality by Lena Wolf. I feel like I've seen this mentioned around the bookish internet. Comes up from time to time. As the plane dips toward the hinterland, she can look across at sand-colored high-rises and hills that are as dry and barren as the surface of the moon. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty intriguing. I think I'm gonna give Carnality 5 stars. I definitely want to know more. Then I have If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. This is another one I've seen mentioned quite a bit in the year and a half since I bought this. Question: if you don't have anything nice to say, should your mother be punished? I have so many questions. I guess that means it's intriguing. I think I'm also going to give it 5 stars. I have questions. Okay, then I have Participation by Anna Moshavakis. And this one, 2 groups. I never made it to love, and now I hear it's defunct. Okay, I kind of love that as well. I'm also going to give that 5 stars. Dang, I really need to make this reading the books that were suggested to me in the bookshop video. And I know that I read the backs and I read the first couple lines, so obviously they were intriguing to me at the time, but yeah, these are all bangers. Then I have The Long Cut by Emily Hall. This is the last one. I was always asking myself what my work was, I thought as I walked to the gallery. Okay, they're not all bangers. That one was less of a banger. Honestly, I'm going to give it 1 star. That first line didn't really do it for me. Dang, I was on such a high there for a minute. Still kind of want to make that video though. Okay, then I have Corregidora by Gail Jones. And this one, it was 1947 when Mutt and I were married. Again, doesn't really give me much. I'm going to give this one 2 stars. Then I have Severance by Ling Ma. This is on my list of books that my best friend and I would like to buddy read together. The end begins before you were ever aware of it. Not bad. I would say 3 stars maybe. Then I have Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. There would be times, particularly at first, when Regan would attempt to identify the moment things had set themselves on a path to inevitable collision. I like it. Maybe not 5 stars, but 4 stars. I like it. Next I have Mother of Strangers by Swad Omri, who is a Palestinian author. The Best Mechanic in Town, Jaffa, June 1947. It took a few sending yells. Subi, 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 god damn Wallach, Subi, before he showed signs of hearing his name. Again, I feel like I've made it clear in this video that I'm not really a fan of first lines of books where it's just one character yelling for another character to come over or calling their name. So I'm going to give it 2 stars. Next I have Rue Street by Shuang Zuteo. The Aeronaut. That morning in 1979, when Lee Min-ki first showed up at his doorstep, Gao Liquan bristled, and not just at the boy's outlandish attire, although his bell-bottoms and flashy leather belt certainly didn't help. Again, I like the sort of tongue-in-cheek, like the author and the reader are in on a joke together, so I'm going to give Rouge Street 4 stars. Then I have After Sappho by Selby Wynne Schwartz. The first thing we did was change our names. That's fine. 2 stars. Animal by Lisa Tadeo. This one I've seen lots of buzz about online. 1. I drove myself out of New York City where a man shot himself in front of me. It is certainly an intense way to start a book. 3 stars. I guess there is an intrigue level to it. I'm not sure if I like it, though. The Bass Rock by Evie Wild. I was 6, and just the 2 of us, my mother and I, took Bowie for a walk along the beach where she and Dad grew up. The shore a mix of black rock and pale, cold sand. I feel pretty neutral on it. I'm going to say 3 stars. Then I have Garden of Earthly Bodies by Sally Oliver. Do you think this is a mistake? 1 star. Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. I have my grandmother's skin. I feel like there's so many ways to interpret that, but of course my brain at first went to a very dark, creepy place. 4 stars. That did really spark the imagination. Next I have Sirens and Muses by Antonia Angris. Chapter 1. Louisa's first assignment at Rynn College of Art was paint home. 3 stars, maybe. Then I have a little mini Canadian author section. So I have A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt. Chapter 1, A Problem of Form. It was late afternoon at the start of August when I went to the university to meet up with River, a dear friend and graduate student in the Department of Sociology who hailed from a reserve to the south, to make sense of the desire to remake my life. I think that's a 3-star first line. A bit of intrigue, but nothing over the top. Then I have Making Love with the Land by Joshua Whitehead. Who names the Rez dog Rez? I am reading Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I let the words find me because the body always knows better than the mind does. Muscles remember, they witness, like trees, riddles etch disease, and I am weeping willow, crying seeds, and dripping saline from my hair. This is how I got my name, you know? So first of all, he mentioned a book I love, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and that was a very beautiful first line. I really liked it. It had a lot of imagery, it was very poetic, it had a lot of interesting punctuation, which I'm always a fan of, a nice rhythm and structure. So I'm going to give this 5 stars as a first line. Very intriguing. Then I have Dear Life Stories by Alice Munro. Once Peter had brought her suitcase on board the train, he seemed eager to get himself out of the way. That doesn't do a lot for me. I think I'm gonna give it 1 star. Then I have Washington Black by Ezi Adugian. I might have been 10, 11 years old, I cannot say for certain, when my first master died. Definitely has some intrigue to it, but again, not the most intriguing of all of the books we've looked at, so I would say Washington Black gets 3 stars. Okay, now I just have these Library of America editions. Let's do these. First is African American Poetry. Phyllis Wheatley on Imagination. Thy various works, Imperial Queen, we see, how bright their forms. It's a pretty short first line. I'm pretty neutral on it, so I think I'm going to give this one 3 stars. Then I have James Baldwin, Early Novels and Stories. I think this one includes Giovanni's Room, which I've read, but let's look at the first line of Go Tell It on the Mountain. Everyone had always said that John would be a preacher when he grew up, just like his father. I mean, considering James Baldwin's father was a preacher, that feels very self-referential. Not the most intriguing first line I've ever read, but Baldwin is an incredible author, and I know I'm going to love his work, but for that one specifically, I'm going to say 2 stars. Then I have the Octavia Butler collection. This is Kindred, Fledgling, and Collected Stories. I have read Kindred. 1. I Awoke to Darkness. Again, I'm a big fan of Octavia Butler. I really enjoy her writing a lot, but that first line was just middle of the road for me. I'm going to give it 2 stars as well. Then I have Frederick Douglass, Speeches and Writings. I feel greatly embarrassed when I attempt to address an audience of white people. That is a pretty intriguing start. I'm going to say 4 stars. Then I have my Zora Neale Hurston collection, Novels and Stories. I have read Their Eyes Were Watching God. Jonah's Gourd Vine. Chapter 1. God was grumbling his thunder and playing the zigzag lightning through his fingers. I think I'm going to give that solid 4 stars. Okay, and then my final Library of America is Ann Petrie, The Street, The Narrows. Chapter 1. There was a cold November wind blowing through 116th Street. I feel pretty neutral about that. Maybe 2 stars. It didn't really give me much to work with. That is it for my visible shelves, but as I said, I do have books down here in the cabinet, so let me grab some. I was just reminded opening that cabinet that I do actually have a good number of French books on my TBR as well. I'm not going to include those in this video, for one, because most of my audience doesn't speak French, so me reading the first lines of a French book in French is not going to do anything for you. And for 2, I am currently in the midst of reading The Count of Monte Cristo in French, and it's a lot for my brain, so I can't read another book in French at the same time. My brain will explode. So, only English books for now. Notes from The Burning Age by Claire North. Chapter 1. Yu was 12 when she saw the kukui of the forest, but later she lied and said she saw only flame. Interesting. 3 stars. Then I have Anne of Manhattan by Brina Starler. May 3rd, Dear Diary. Today the middle set of Hammond twins threw up on me. Okay. That was not really what I expected. I'm going to give it 1 star. Then I have Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. London, 1824, Kensington House. Never knew a moment made better standing still. That's interesting, but I also disagree. I've definitely had moments in my life that were made better by standing still. Like the first time I saw the Northern Lights was definitely made better by me just standing still in awe. But anyway, that's a pretty good first line though, even if I don't agree with it. So I'm going to say 4 stars. Then I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I feel like this one was really popular for a short time. Chapter 1, Nella, February 3rd, 1791. She would come at daybreak, the woman whose letter I held in my hands, the woman whose name I did not yet know. I'd say that's pretty intriguing. 4 stars. I have belatedly decided that I'm not going to include nonfiction in this video. I just feel like reading nonfiction for a reading vlog maybe isn't as interesting as fiction, although feel free to correct me in the comments if you actually would really enjoy to see me read more nonfiction in my reading vlogs, but most of what's in the cabinet is French or nonfiction. So I think I'm just going to skip that, also because I'm getting really tired, which I should have expected going into this. What I'm going to do is remind myself which books I gave 5 stars. I probably should have left those out as I went, but hindsight is 20/20. Technically, I just read the little blurb on the inside of this. This is a collection of nonfiction pieces. So as much as this is one of my favorite first lines of all the ones I read in this video, technically it's nonfiction. So I'm going to put it aside, but I definitely need to read that one soon because dang. That was a really amazing first line. This is my order, I think, from favorite to least favorite. And I think, as cliche as it might seem, that Pride and Prejudice is my favorite. I'm sure that that opinion is partially colored by the fact that it is probably one of the most famous first lines of a book ever. But it is a very good first line, and part of the reason why it's so famous is because it is very well done, you know? But it's not necessarily as beautiful and evocative as some of these other first lines. I think if I was including nonfiction, the winner probably would have actually been one of these 2. But I said I wasn't going to do nonfiction, and I kind of don't want to go back on my word because that also means that I have to read you the first lines of all my other nonfiction. And I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, I'm so on the fence. I think I'm going to read Pride and Prejudice. This also kind of feels like I'm cheating because I have technically read Pride and Prejudice, but like I said, I read it when I was so young. I feel like I really didn't process most of it. I just kind of quickly went through it and I remember almost nothing. Maybe as I start to read it, it will come back to me, but I truly remember very little. Yeah, I think, okay, maybe it's cheating. Maybe y'all will groan at home, but I think I'm going to do Pride and Prejudice. This is also so many people's absolute favorite classic of all time, if not their favorite book, bar none. So I really feel like I need to reread it with an adult brain, you know? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reread Pride and Prejudice in this gorgeous LitJoy classic edition. Hopefully I like it better than Wuthering Heights because y'all know I had issues with that one. But I'm excited for this. I feel like it's going to be great. And it does have a very iconic first line, which I feel makes it a good choice for this video. So in the meantime, as I put away books and start reading this, let me know in the comments which of the book's first lines I read in this video intrigued you the most. And did you have completely different books that were drawing you in versus the books that I liked? I'm very curious. So I just got to the 50% mark of Pride and Prejudice, and I seriously have forgotten so much of this. There are lines of dialogue here and there that stick out very clearly to me as soon as I read them. I remember them. But outside of that and the very basic plot, I truly remember almost nothing of this. I was definitely correct in my assumption that I would be more able to enjoy this as an adult than I did at 7 or 8 years old when I read it for the first time. I really don't know why I waited so long to reread this. It's been over 20 years since I read it the first time, but I'm really enjoying it. It's really fun. I really like Elizabeth, and I like how flawed she is because she's definitely not a perfect character. She's very smart and witty and funny and self-assured, but she's also very young and naive and judgmental of other people and very confident in her first impressions and very willing to mold anything that happens to the narrative she's already built about people she meets or about situations. It's funny because a character who is obviously meant to be a little silly and someone we don't love at one point asks Elizabeth how old she is and just makes a comment that she speaks very passionately or very confidently for someone so young. And it is funny reading this now as someone who is a decade older than this character, because I look at her and not only do we share a name, but I can see so much of myself in her when I was her age. When I was 20 years old, I was definitely overconfident. I was very outspoken and passionate about a lot of things, and I still am outspoken and passionate about a lot of things, but I had an unfounded confidence because I had experienced so little of the world. There was so much I did not know, and yet I was very sure of myself and very sure that my opinions on everything were always correct, and I always knew better than anyone else, and I was always, the smartest in the room and whatever, which is very much the impression I get from Elizabeth. And it's funny because I'm sure that's very off-putting to a lot of people. And I'm sure I was off-putting to people at the time because I was just so lacking in perspective and humility in understanding that there was so much I did not know, and also that I would spend my entire life learning that I was wrong about things and reevaluating my understanding of the world or of situations or of people. And I think to a certain extent that's sort of a natural time in, someone's life, in our development as people, to go through a period of time of feeling sort of overconfident, especially compared to our actual experience in the world and knowledge. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of really fun to read a character who reminds me so much of myself and to kind of imagine how Elizabeth might grow and progress as a person over time, as I found myself doing, continuing to be the same person, have the same personality and maybe the same passion and being opinionated and enjoying debating things and all of the rest, enjoying some verbal sparring, but to also find, a new maturity and a new understanding of your own ignorance to so much in the world, and being open to realizing that there's so much more to learn, and no one is ever always right or always the most perceptive or whatever. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this as a character study of Elizabeth, especially because it does feel like reading a character study of myself at that age. And I feel like it's really amplified by the fact that her name is Elizabeth. So when characters refer to her that way, it just feels even more so like I can insert myself into the story, which is kind of a funny experience because I must admit I am not someone who typically self-inserts when I read. It's actually funny to me when I hear about other people doing that and how often people seem to sort of self-insert when they read stories or play games. And that's just not something I really do. It always feels like I am the audience member to this play that is ongoing in my brain. And it is really weird because I find myself sort of being pulled in more than usual. And I'm sure a great part of that is that we share the same name, but there's definitely some similarities there. So I'm finding that really interesting. I also had forgotten how quickly Mr. Darcy falls for her. My remembrance was that they both disliked each other for a very long time before they understood their feelings. But no, he basically just immediately has a crush on her, which is really funny. That's kind of fun for me to kind of re-experience that because I definitely forgot the particulars. And now that I think about it, it's been ages since I watched a film adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. I think the last time I saw one would have been the 2004 or 5 Keira Knightley movie, whenever that one came out. So I would have been 13-ish, 12 or 13 when that movie came out. And I don't think I've watched any adaptation since. So that was 20 years ago. Which makes me feel old, but also explains why I've forgotten all of the particulars of this story. But it makes it fun because it really is like reading it for the first time, but occasionally having very vivid deja vu of, you know, the first line of the story or, you know, mild spoilers. But I feel like also probably most of you have heard this quote before, but feel free to skip to this time if you don't want a quote that gives away events in this book before the 50% mark. But again, this is a very famous quote, so you probably heard it. But the quote that ends with, "I had not known you a month before I felt you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed on to marry," which, as I read that whole paragraph, and especially the ending, that is so clear to me, and I'm sure I've heard it quoted in other places since. But it is just funny to have those little echoes of really familiar lines, whether they are just, you know, ubiquitous in our collective consciousness, or if I just remember them from reading the book as a child. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm definitely struggling a little bit with all the stereotypical depiction of most of the women in this story. You know, there's a lot of stereotypes of silly women and jealous women and gossiping women and women who are duplicitous or conniving in their attempts to snag a man. You know, there's a lot of that, which, I mean, there are women like that, sure, but it is a little frustrating to me to read a book where almost every female character is represented as, you know, a collection of negative stereotypes about women as a whole, with the exception, of course, of our dear Lizzie, who is, you know, not like other girls by being bookish and smart and not caring what people think and rejecting marriage proposals left and right. And again, I relate to her, and clearly she is, you know, a very realistic depiction of a very flawed and human girl, and the other women in the book are not inaccurate portrayals of how women can be, certainly. I think because I just recently finished reading The Count of Monte Cristo, which also had a lot of casual stereotypes about women, a lot of casual misogyny, but had a cast of very diverse and really interesting and layered and complex female characters. I feel like reading this, at least so far, I'm feeling a little let down by the development of most of the female characters, with the exception of Lizzie herself and her sister Jane, who is more timid than Lizzie and, you know, more good-natured and generally optimistic about situations and people. But she feels a little bit more layered and developed. She's had more page time, I guess. But many of the female characters are just a little one-dimensional, I guess. Though, to be fair, the more I think about it, a lot of the male characters are also sort of played for laughs and built on stereotypes. So I'm sure part of it is just a natural sensitivity to reading female characters that are built on stereotypes and not built like any other character should be. But there is a lot of irony in here and a lot of commentary on society and sort of poking fun at social norms of the time. And I'm certain that there was a lot of commentary on how women are treated in society and how women are viewed in society and sort of the roles they are forced to play to get along in a world that does not value them as full human beings. There was a moment where Mrs. Bennet was talking about how gorgeous Jane is, and just everyone tells her how beautiful she is, and you can't fault her for bringing it up because it's just true that her daughter is so beautiful. It's a constant topic of conversation how gorgeous Jane is, which, you know, good for Jane, but also there is an aspect to that refrain that feels very objectifying, as if Jane is a particularly well-bred dog or horse, as if she exists to be a beautiful creature for people to appreciate, to grace others' eyes with her beauty, and not for, you know, her kind and gentle heart and her optimism and loyalty and all of her other lovely qualities. So yeah, I think I'm just feeling extra sensitive to it, especially with some of the sort of very blatant, not like other girls qualities that Lizzie was giving off at the start of the book, which, I mean, I get it. I understand why it is that way. And again, it's realistic. I also went through a period of internalized misogyny in my life. I think a lot of women and girls go through a period, especially when they're young, of internalized misogyny and sort of wanting to separate ourselves from femininity or girlhood or womanhood because we realize how much contempt there is for femininity and womanhood and girlhood in society. And we don't want to be on the receiving end of contempt. And so it feels like the solution is to separate ourselves from other girls or from girls like that and to, distinguish ourselves as something different, something other, something less silly and frivolous and vain and jealous and whatever else is being lobbed at 50% of the population based on gender presentation. So I get it. I know. I feel like people are writing comments already explaining to me why it was done. And I get it. I totally get it. It does frustrate me a little bit. But you know what? I'm only 50% of the way through. So I imagine things will develop more as the story progresses. I must admit as well, I'm really enjoying the romance. Again, maybe it's just because I can relate to Lizzie so much, but that verbal sparring and the sort of little jabs back and forth and tiny bit of competition and hostility between them reminds me a lot of how I used to flirt. I was in my late teens, early 20s. That was, how I flirted with people. And the people I was attracted to were people who could stimulate my mind and make me feel challenged in terms of their perspectives on the world, their opinions, their ability to express their opinions and to debate and to have interesting and deep conversations. And I really feel like their relationship so far very much has that sort of tension of debate and passion and intellect that, again, I can relate to. And that's definitely something that I think a lot of bookish people maybe can. That idea of wanting your romantic partner to be someone who stimulates your mind as much as they stimulate your body. And I've been lucky to find my Mr. Darcy, although my husband was never as arrogant. Whoa, did you hear that thunder? That was so loud. Oh my gosh. My microphone might not have picked it up, but wow, that startled me for a second. My Mr. Darcy was never so arrogant, which is great. And I also never hated him. But other than, an initial attraction to each other, we really first connected by having an intellectual discussion about some modern day philosophers that we both respected and admired. And that really did it for me. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, I'm really finding their development of their romance, their sort of enemies to lovers situation, really quite pleasing so far. And it's obvious to me why this is such a beloved classic. And again, kind of kicking myself for waiting so very long to reread it because I'm having a great time. So anyway, I feel like I've been rambling for a while, but those are my thoughts on the first half. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm enjoying the characters. I'm finding it funny and engaging, entertaining, somewhat silly. And I really like how deeply flawed Elizabeth is as our protagonist. She has her blind spots, she has her hypocrisies and that overconfidence. And, she has a not so small helping of pride and prejudice of her own. So it's fun. I'm enjoying it. Maybe I'll do a super short spoiler section just to talk about what happened right before I stopped reading. And then I will go and read the rest of this and then I'll be back and share my final thoughts. So spoilers, Mr. Darcy just proposed and she got so angry at all of his, commentary on how she was a completely inappropriate choice for him as a partner because of her family connections or lack thereof and her lack of financial standing or standing in society and just going on and on and on about how much he's had to overcome, but that he can't help himself because he just loves her so much. And she's just getting increasingly irate and then tearing him a new one. Fantastic. Just the pacing of that scene, the suddenness of him showing up out of nowhere and admitting that he is so passionately in love with her that he must marry her right this instant, and her being completely taken aback and then just growing more and more and more and more angry until she explodes, and then just being so angry at each other. Just perfection, literary perfection. And then I read the chapter after where he comes across her in the garden and gives her a letter explaining all of his actions and his history with Mr. Wickham. Just so good. And it feels like such a cliffhanger where I need to keep reading. I almost didn't want to stop to film my thoughts because I just wanted to keep going and know how she would react to the letter and what's going to happen next. When are they going to see each other next? Where are they going to go from here? They're both so angry now. It's just, so good. It's so good. I'm having a great time. Can you tell? But anyway, I don't really have a lot to say in terms of spoilers for the first half, other than just mentioning that whole scene was so fantastically done. Just really, really masterful. I kind of want to pick it apart sentence by sentence, but I'm going to refrain for now because I want to finish the book. But I think I might go back and do that because it's just such an incredible scene. I also think as soon as I finish this, I'm going to have to force my husband to watch the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice with me because I feel like I need to see this acted out on screen now. That is it. Those are my thoughts. I'm having fun. And now I'm going to go. So I just finished Pride and Prejudice, and as you can probably tell by the look on my face, I really enjoyed it. It was really sweet. The way that they finally came together in the end, the resolution of the love story was really adorable. And I'm just happy for everyone. I love the little happily ever after, and I love how various character stories were resolved. Very sweet, very cute. And I think my absolute favorite thing about this book is the relationship between Elizabeth and Jane, their sisterly relationship, which, although I would say, while I am very similar to Elizabeth, I feel like my real life sister is probably also more similar to Elizabeth than she is to Jane. But I feel like the depth of their sisterhood and their loyalty to each other and their care and affection and the way they commiserate and appreciate each other and just enjoy each other's company is very relatable because my sister is my best friend and I love her to bits and we have a lot in common. Again, we are probably a lot more similar than Jane and Elizabeth are in terms of our personalities, but we have a similar level of extreme love and care for each other. So I really enjoyed their relationship and I found the other sisters and their dynamic really fun. There was so much, silliness and comedy in the characters. And while some of it definitely felt like it relied a little too much on stereotypes about women or sort of misogynistic tropes than I would like, I must admit there were also male characters who were the butt of the joke. And they also kind of relied on stereotypes about men. So it's just kind of that kind of humor. So I'm letting it go, or at least I'm trying to. I think the one I struggled with the most was Mrs. Bennet. I just felt like she was portrayed as such a silly, silly woman and so changeable and flighty and insincere in a way that was off-putting, but I don't think she was supposed to be a very likable character. She was supposed to be funny, and there were moments that I found her funny. Obviously, Pride and Prejudice is one of the most famous literary love stories of all time. Elizabeth and Darcy are iconic and, they are so loved and so enduring in our collective consciousness for a reason. They have a really great banter and energy and passion for each other. I would have loved a little bit more direct dialogue for their final reconciliation or their final, declaration of love to each other. I wish we'd had more direct dialogue back and forth through all of that. There was a little bit of telling, not showing in that scene. And I really felt like we needed the payoff of having a really moment by moment immersed scene of them acknowledging and sharing their feelings for each other and sort of maybe having a kiss. I know in the time that probably wasn't super appropriate, but it is interesting to me that they do not kiss once. I'm not even sure. I'm trying to think back if we specifically know if they ever even touch at all. She must have taken his arm at some point. I guess they danced in that one scene, but they truly had barely any contact. And I mean, again, reading from a modern perspective, even if it had remained very chaste, I would have loved, you know, even a tiny peck, you know, being taken away by their emotion. It was a very cerebral declaration of love. And like I said, much more telling than showing, which my little romantic heart wanted a little bit more in that moment. But there were some really beautiful quotes in that scene and also throughout that I really enjoyed. I really liked the writing style in general, though again, I think my biggest gripe is with a little more telling than showing in certain moments than I would like. And the ending was a touch abrupt. I did like that it was sort of a postmortem on where every character is and how they're doing and how they're feeling. But I feel like I would have loved an epilogue of marital bliss with Elizabeth and Darcy, you know, sitting in neighboring armchairs, looking out at the hills at Pemberley, both reading their own book and then sort of quipping wittily to each other back and forth as, you know, the sun sets. As a little send-off for the characters. It felt a little clinical at the end. But again, probably more reflective of the time period and the style of the time than anything else. I'm struggling a little bit with my rating because part of me wants to give it 5 stars and part of me is sitting at 4 stars and is sort of hovering between, which if I did half stars, I would just give it 4.5 and leave it at that. But I feel like I liked it enough. I thought it was sweet enough. I was engaged enough and invested enough in it for it to get 5 stars. But there were certainly aspects to it that I feel like could have been just a touch more elevated for my tastes or tweaked a little bit for my tastes. I think for now, I'm going to settle on 4 stars because that feels like the reasonable choice. And I feel like over time, I might settle on that, feeling more comfortable, reflecting that I really, really enjoyed it and thought it was very well done and is, you know, a classic and iconic for a reason, while still having little fiddly, nitpicky things about it that work quite perfectly to my taste. So yeah, I'm sitting at 4 stars right now, but I reserve the right to change my mind. I might decide to make it 5 stars later. You'll have to go to my Goodreads to know where it currently stands, depending on when you watch this video. But right now, 4 stars for Pride and Prejudice. This was really great. I'm really glad that I reread it. Like I said, I remembered little to nothing, maybe 3 or 4 quotes I remembered. And I very loosely remembered parts of the plot, but not even the entirety of the main plot or main romance. So it really did feel almost entirely like a fresh read to me. And I'm glad that I reread it because it's one of those things where, yes, technically I could classify it as read, but it was so gone from my mind that I could not have spoken about it. And I prefer to be able to, you know, speak on every single book I've ever read and have thoughts and opinions on them, even if I read them years ago. And now I feel like having read it at this point in my life, having annotated it thoroughly, and taken notes and, you know, I'm going to write a review on it and having this video, I feel like I'm going to forever be able to opine on Pride and Prejudice, which is great. I love that. So yeah, that's that. That was this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely had a lot of fun going through my entire TBR bookshelf and reading all the first lines. There are so many books on this bookshelf now that I'm really excited to read after this. I'm still really glad that I picked to read Pride and Prejudice first, but there are so many books on my shelves that had really intriguing first lines that I really want to get to now. So I feel like this video kind of served its purpose for me. And I hope it inspired you to maybe go through your TBR pile, however big or small it might be, and read the first lines and get inspired again and remember why you maybe bought the books in the first place and maybe start to work your way through your TBR, just like I am going to do my best to do. Thank you again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to click the link in my description box and use my code PLANTBB25 to get 25% off your first order from Ritual. Thank you, as always, to my patrons for your support. I appreciate you all so much. And if you want to read books with me and discuss them with me in real time over Zoom every single month, consider joining us on Patreon in the book club. We have an amazing time and read incredible books across a wide range of genres, including classics like Pride and Prejudice. And with that, I'm going to get going. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you really, really soon in my next one. Bye, friends.